welcome back to another episode of Gym Eat Repeat. We're coming to you from the Gym Eat Repeat podcast studios today. So today we have on Mike Cuciniello from Team Rare Breed and Craig Yarnell from Team Synergy and Science. They're both coaches in the industry. They've trained tons of bodybuilders, have great success. And as not only the host of the podcast, I also have a team, which is Team Extreme. All right, guys. So, we've all been doing this a long time, and I know there's, tons of different philosophies out there in regards to, the way we get people ready for the stage, as far as training goes and diet goes and supplements and cardio. So what type of philosophies do you guys adopt? Are you following one type of philosophy? What are you finding works best for you and your clients?
Okay. So, the thing that I've done, I've been, trying to help people probably since back when message boards started back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I started that with bodybuilding.com and also with the OCB. They used to have their own message boards, and that's kind of where I got myself started. And then I was introduced to Dr. Joe Klemczewski, who runs Diet Doc franchises all over the U.S., even in a couple other countries too, I'm sure. And I learned about flexible dieting through him when I started using him as a coach back in 2002. And he got me my first pro card back in 2004. And it was more macros based.
Right.
Okay. And the training was more, it's kind of like a power building philosophy that I use with different rep ranges, with different rep tempos. I don't rule out any exercises. You can always vary certain exercises, but I'm still a big believer in using a base foundation through your big three that everybody likes to make fun of today, and doesn't think that you can use that without the aid, which I don't believe. You got to take it on a little differently when you're, even as a bikini competitor, to hit the basics, whether it's a squat, deadlift, and bench, because I feel those things still lay the foundation, and whether those things don't cause hypertrophy, they cause strength. And over time, they're going to help you to, get stronger. And the other lifts that, that we all like to call the hypertrophy exercises are the ones that we, will standardly use instead of the, saying that we don't need to squat or deadlift.
Right. And I've seen, you're a big proponent of, the big three.
Yes.
I think there's maybe not a day that goes by that you're not preaching the importance of those.
No.
So do you put that in with all of your clients, regardless of the divisions they're competing in?
Yes, that's the other part too. I don't believe there's a way to train a division. Your genetics put you in your class, and that's
right.
how you get up. That's how you end up in your class, and a good coach will direct you in the right spot to go, and your genetics kind of lead you there. Because I'm telling you that there are some people that are that genetically gifted that some of them could run and hypertrophy from it.
Right.
Like that, you could see it. Those are the persons that you want to put on your boot camp list and use them as an example, even though the 99% of them won't look like that because they took your boot camp class. But at the end of the day, I still believe that, we have to guide our clients in the right class to help with the judging too, that has to follow the criteria as well.
Right. Now, Mike, what's your take on the big three? Is that something that you also, use as a base for your clients?
Yeah, I do. I definitely have a different style of training. I started like Craig, same thing, like 30 years ago. I trained powerlifting, CrossFit, bodybuilding, all three. Then I trained in a lot of sports. I was a football player, hockey player, so I learned from different coaches back in the day. I also had coaches when I was younger with the macronutrients and all that stuff. But most of my research I did was field trial and error.
Right.
My philosophy, more or less, is I like the big three, but I don't do it every day. I'm more of a high volume trainer. A lot of supersets, a lot of drop sets. My philosophies are more or less, if you have 300 pounds on the bar and you're coming down with it and you're coming slow, you're not developing explosive power.
Right.
So what I do is I drop weight down and I do a high rep volume. I get explosive power. And I tested it with a lot of my athletes and a lot of my high school kids, and I have a guy in the NHL, he plays for the Edmonton Oilers, and I used that philosophy on him. And when he went back to training camp with the Edmonton Oilers, he was the fastest, strongest on the team.
Nice.
And the coach asked me, he goes, "What'd you do?" And I explained to him how I train. and he was kind of like, we usually just deadlift and bench and squat. So he just got a lot more explosive. So, I look at it as if you put 200 pounds in the bar and you're being explosive and you're repping out to pretty much failure. If you do it 20 times, you're doing 4,000 pounds in tonnage. If you're doing 300 pounds 3 times at a max out, you're doing 900 pounds. The body doesn't understand how much, weight you're using, all it knows is the stress you're putting it under. So I try to put as much stress under the body as possible in the shortest amount of time.
Right. And now, does that apply to your physique athletes also? Are you still using that same philosophy there?
Yeah, and I still do the big 3. I mean, I do it once a week, so I test them at the end of the week.
Right.
So that's more or less my philosophies. I like very high volume. It's just, it's just my style. It's not saying one style's right, one style's wrong. It's just something that I found through my trial and error that I like. I test everybody out, so I don't look at one particular way. I look at how many different ways I can get there. Right. And most of the time it's been working and I feel really good. And, the athletes get conditioned and they get in good shape and they're strong and, they feel healthy. So the joints aren't hurting as much. I mean, even myself, I train with most of my athletes. I'm 51 years old right now, and I can still train with Division I football players. I still hang in there with them and probably beat them. Right. So
well, that says a lot about you personally, and also about your training methods, how you could have that longevity not only for yourself but for your athletes. And for all the people that are listening today, so far, just within the first few minutes, we heard 2 almost completely different philosophies from 2 top coaches. Yeah, so,
but Mark,
I'm going to get crazy here, and I'm going to throw in a third philosophy that which I use, and we're really going to get people confused here, and then we're going to talk about all this.
That's great. Yeah.
So, I've been doing this since 1999, and the way I train myself is definitely different than I train my clients. And when it comes to physique competitors, I do treat them all differently based on what they're trying to do, what division they're trying to compete in, and their body type and their genetic makeup. The things that I don't do, if we have a typical 16-week or 20-week prep, maybe we bench and deadlift, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 times in that block. I'm focused on a lot of unilateral stuff, a lot of dumbbell work. Our volume is kind of like mid-range. We're doing 12 to 16 sets per big body part. But we're not squatting heavy. We're not deadlifting heavy, and we're definitely not benching heavy. And as you both know, and as I know with you guys, we're all putting out world-class physiques with 3 totally different philosophies. So at the end of this podcast, I think collectively as a group, we will share why all of those work and why we're all getting, at least equal success with 3 different philosophies. And, if everybody stays tuned in, you're going to be in a shock to hear why all of these work. Now, so we have 3 different weightlifting philosophies here, 3 different schools of thought when it comes to training. So as coaches, we all do something with nutrition for our clients, some more, some less. So Craig, what you mentioned flexible dieting before, is that how you go about getting your clients stage ready? Are they all using flexible dieting?
Yeah, my clients use macro-based dieting, and I give them macros to follow. And it's just like we talk about when we talk about the old saying of feeding, it's to feed the fish, instead of to, teach them how to fish instead of just feeding them the fish.
Right.
If you don't learn the macros, there's no reason for many people to not cut out foods if it's unnecessary. You hear people cutting out fruits and other items out of their diet, and they're not allergic to it, and their body doesn't respond to it in a bad way. So why change something that hasn't, been an issue?
So you won't cut anything out all the way up until stage time? Everything's all there for the taking?
Unless I see any issues where I see any kind of stagnation, I can say, let's try and go a little more, you want to say bro with the diet, we can do that. But if I don't feel there's anything, like I have a girl that's competing in 2 weeks, and girls are telling her that she's not cutting out her cottage cheese and she's not cutting out her yogurt. And it's like, why?
Right.
She's not bloated. She's not, there are no issues.
Right.
We're just going to track it, and we're going to keep it right on the line too. And even with the training part, I have a lot of things that I throw in. I'm still a bodybuilder at heart.
Right.
So a lot of my stuff is going to cross over to what you use and what Mike uses as well. There's a lot more of that than powerlifting than what you think. Powerlifting is a small portion of my stuff, unless they're trying to compete as a powerlifter.
Right. I hope everybody's out there taking notes right now.
But I use it. I use all of those things. I'll use rep tempos. I'll use 1 to 5. I'll use 6 to 12. I'll use plus 12. All those rep ranges work because they all cause hypertrophy.
Now, Mike, what do you think about that? I think you and I align maybe a little bit more on that old school mentality of, like a bro diet or clean foods. So what type of approaches are you taking that you find the most successful?
When I do macros and food, right? So I'll lay out the food that I would like them to eat with the macros in each meal for meal. What I do is I start taking notes early on and see how different foods are reacting to their body. Sometimes people feel bloated with rice or oatmeal, and I start switching it around. I start figuring out what and how their body's responding, how their digestive tract is going, how things are moving along. As we get closer to the show, I actually start to put them on a meal plan, more or less, like the last maybe 6 weeks. I just feel that I found, not with everybody, but I found that giving macros a little bit freedom for certain people, and they start eating more sugar and they start eating things that they're not responding how I want them to respond. And I'm trying to figure it out. And I just feel it's easier when I know exactly what they're eating when it gets closer, and I can make those adjustments.
Right. You brought up an interesting point there about, maybe they're consuming too much sugar, so they're not, yielding the results that you're expecting. And in the flexible dieting approach, those sugars are all accounted for, right? So like a carb is a carb at that point. So, Craig, how do you handle that? Like, are you altering their training style? Or are you just going to, dial back the calories completely?
Yeah, you just have to follow how their weight responds to the food. I mean, sugar is just like anything else. But if you're eating generally, they don't have that kind of freedom where you think they're just going to throw in a Reese's bar here or there, or they're going to throw different types of candy or stuff like that. They're learning how to use the right type of foods, because we have such a large array of natural foods that we cut down to like 5 when we're getting ready for a show, and there's not really a need to do that. So why?
I'm sorry, Craig, to interrupt. Here's my problem. Not saying you're doing it right. I'm not saying you're doing it wrong. Every time I go on an app, everything is different, right? Like the macros are always different. Yeah. So if you go on like a cup of rice on one app, it's different macros on another app. Like they're never the same. That's where I feel like it gets really confusing with different people because they're using different apps. When I feel like I tell somebody at the end, listen, I want you to eat a cup of rice or 6 ounces of sweet potatoes or a cup of oatmeal, I feel it's more direct. Do you feel that way? Or I don't know, Well,
they also have to realize that when you do, whether, I'm not a big pasta fan anyway, because I think it's wasted carbs but like using like rices, they have to just remeasure the rice. And if they stick with what's not listed on the side, they just have to readjust with the water content of the rice. And like I said too, when you talk about weighing stuff, I talk about weighing everything on a scale. We're not using cups, we're not using spoons, unless you're putting it on the scale.
I do grams all the time.
Yes, grams or ounces, depending, whatever it is. And like I said, and the one thing I know that you can get more accurate with is if you weigh, proteins before they're cooked is the best and most accurate way. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit there and have you cook 3 ounces of chicken every freaking time or whatever. So my clients cook it in bulk, and then they just, stick to a consistent number that we can get from a cooked number. So you're both, doing things different. Mike, you're doing kind of a hybrid of macros and meal plan. And I also do something similar to that. I want to figure out what my clients' macros need to be. And then I assign certain foods to eat to reach those macros. And, when I design a meal plan, I'm picking from, 15,000 different foods
that I have, I have data on, with your carb content, your fat content, all the vitamins and nutrients that are involved in that. And then I do take that also one step further, where after I develop a meal plan, I run it through a software to see what my total vitamins are, right? There's certain vitamins that we want to maximize to make sure we're getting all of the nutrients we need, because just because we're, adding, blueberries and blackberries and sweet potatoes doesn't necessarily mean we're getting all of the micronutrients that are needed also. And that's how I design what supplements I use, right? So if our, vitamin C is way too low, we're going to supplement with that. Or if our B is way too low, we're going to supplement with that.
Yeah.
So I also do some type of hybrid, like you're saying. However, I pick the foods and the amounts, and you're sticking to that essential meal plan for at least 2 weeks. And then based on your results, once I have that data back in, your body fat, your weight, your measurements, how you were digesting your food, what it was making you feel like, energy levels and strength levels, then we go ahead and adjust from there. So it's not your bro science where it's, grilled chicken and rice, 5 or 6 times a day, and tilapia and asparagus to help thin the skin. I know Craig likes that a lot.
It's still a good meal to eat, but I'm not telling you to eat it every day, and it doesn't do shit except,
I just feel like when you do have a plan, not saying like when you get into the last at the very end, I like to do it that way too, because I did experiment along the way, and I did see what carbs are working and what carbs are, like we said before, bloated, what's making you bloated with the digestive tract. That's all very important going into the last few weeks. If your digestive tract is feeling bloated, you're going to get the client getting stressed out, and they're going to be like, I feel bloated, I feel this, I feel that. And, the mental part of the game is the most important part of the game, as we know, going into the final weeks. So I try to really pay attention to that, to the mental part. And it's just easier for me to know going into those last few weeks what works and what doesn't work.
Right.
Someone I feel is eating all different things coming into that, I really can't get a gauge of what's really reacting on the bloatedness and all that other stuff.
Right.
Like
it's a little bit of a crapshoot towards the end. And that's another good point. You said earlier, within those first few weeks, we know how our clients are going to react to different foods. You mentioned, Mike, that you don't want your clients eating a bunch of sugar. And, Craig talks about, like, no, you not just have the freedom to eat Reese's peanut butter cups every day.
Yeah.
But, though that sugar is accounted for in a macro-based plan. So, the next thing that I do, all of my diets are also low glycemic.
Yeah.
So that is one thing that I'm real big on, is making sure, they're low glycemic diets, except, post-workout, maybe our meals might be, really trying to spike that insulin post-workout.
Sure.
But as we get closer, all that kind of gets teetered down. What are your thoughts on that, Craig?
Well, if most of your meals are balanced with a protein, a carb, and a fat, your glycemic index is going to pretty much be negligible, because the fats are going to take it down, your proteins are going to take it down, and you're not going to get that insulin spike anyway. And the glycemic index of the food is going to be basically all for naught when you're combining it. And most of these people that are doing prep are not eating, carbs on their own. So, and even when you said, when you start to mention about people, if you work with them long enough, you start to understand what they're doing. If you start with them long, 20, 25 weeks, 30 weeks away, you're going to get the gist of what they're doing. And when you get down to the last few weeks, they're not going to make a lot of changes. That we're mostly creatures of habit, and we're going to stick to similar things that we know are going to work. And we're going to, it's going to whittle down too, just because your calories are going to drop and drop and drop as you get, down to that finite point right now, if you're going to be doing a show in the last, couple weeks.
Yeah. So now that we have all of the training philosophy down, the nutrition philosophy, we're going to touch on the cardio. You have people doing fasted cardio, you have people doing HIIT, you have people doing, cardio post-workout. What type of, how big of a segment is cardio in your plans?
Go ahead.
Cardio, I usually, I don't go over like 35 minutes usually. That's pretty much high at the end of the prep. I start off not very high at all, like, maybe 15 minutes, like, around there. And then as we get closer to the show, gradually start to peak up. I'm very big on the Stairmaster for developing legs with glutes, hams. I also, I know Craig don't like this, but I have my people running like 1 or 2 miles.
Fasted? Are you doing fasted cardio?
Yeah, fasted.
I know Craig's up early hitting the track.
Yeah. I have some of my people running. Like, I just like it. I feel like, if you put someone on the treadmill, you make them do a mile. If they're doing like a slow paced jog, and then you put them outside on a mile, it's two different games.
Right.
The conditioning totally changes. It's a different game. I'm not saying I do that with everybody. With some people, depending on how far, if we're really pushing hard at the end, I find it works. I mean, that's what works for me. Like, I put some people on the sleds, do different things like that.
So will you have somebody doing 35 minutes of cardio, even with that high volume type of training that you do?
Yeah, I mean, I go as high as 30, 35 reps sometimes in a set,
right,
with a block. Sometimes I'm drop setting, supersetting, it goes high. It's just again, it's the philosophies that I found that worked for me.
Yeah.
And I tried all different styles. Like I said, I did CrossFit, I did bodybuilding, I did powerlifting. So I tried to figure out what I found the best in all three, and that's what I found. I mean, if you look at, I remember when I went to, when I was working out by Princeton University, you looked at the Olympic row team. I became friends with the Olympic row team that were there. And I went in there and they were rowing 1,000 reps. Like, you know what I'm saying? And these girls had the biggest batch I ever seen.
Right.
They could actually went into any show that we have, and they were just huge.
Right.
If you go into guy coming out of jail, right? He's doing push-ups and sit-ups.
Push-ups, pull-ups, and dips, baby. That prison workout.
Most of your best bodies and natural bodies come out of jail. Those guys are jacked.
Right.
We got guys who can be world champions that way.
Should we recruit at the exit of the local jails?
That's a good spot to start. But think about also like a gymnast. They're doing the same thing 6 hours, 5 hours a day in the Olympic. Their backs, they're just jacked. Their shoulders. So it's a high volume, high base. So when I was in Princeton University and I went there and I saw that and I started talking to the coaches and I started watching them train, I started to observe like such a high volume, and I was like, wow, they look really good. They could be body. I think these girls could have got on stage and killed it.
Right.
I started to like test things out, and I found, I go super high reps, and I just feel it's more explosive for me, and then when you go on the bench later on, you test yourself at the end of the week, and you do an hour a day, the explosiveness coming out of the bench or coming out of the squats or coming out of deadlifts is so fast and powerful. It creates so much speed that your strength goes up.
Right.
Even when I tested that on my football players, my high school football players, I did it for years, 5 years I did a test. And their strength could go from they'll bench you 150 and they're at 300 pounds within, 4 months, 5 months, because they have so much explosiveness coming out of the hole. So,
that's interesting.
And when they're doing 315 coming down slow, they don't have nothing at the bottom. There's no hit at the bottom.
Right.
They're not jolting out of the bottom. So the bottom hit is where I go for it. And if you look at like Westside Barbell, that's how Louis Simmons used to train too. He had the same philosophies of power speed. It was all about power speed. That's how he generated all the power.
Right. So Craig, what are you doing with cardio? So
okay.
we see the one thing I really love about Craig is you are very open with your thoughts on social media. You are you're dropping knowledge all the time, and also your opinion and some of your philosophies. So I know you're not a fan of fasted cardio.
No.
What do you do with cardio, if any?
Well, yeah, there's still cardio, and at the end of the day, I base my cardio on the individual's need, because a lot of times you have to find out what that person does. If he's a construction worker, that person is going to probably not need a whole lot of cardio to begin with. Right. So you can use their job to start with first off, or you can even see if some of them do keep track of their steps in how you go about giving them cardio. And
are you looking for a certain amount of steps per day?
Well, in that 8 to 10 range, if they do that, then that's that's a good higher average to me, where you can back off a little bit on the cardio, but then you have to see how they respond to the food. Because right. I'm not gonna, like with cardio, in the beginning, like Mike said, I give barely any to start with. You have some really bad coaches that start right out 7 days a week, 60 minutes. And
60
out of the
minutes
gate
a day, baby.
And 1,000 calories a day. Where do they have to go? You have nowhere to go with that. When you need
nothing.
When you need to add cardio, how are you going to add it in when you already got it there? I know you can start doing 2 days, which is insane. So the way I look at it is you have to put it in strategically along with, okay, well, maybe this week I'm going to add another cardio instead of drop their food.
Right.
I'd rather take care of food than cardio. I think food is the better way to go. And I also think that there's different ways and modalities to hit with cardio. There's a couple ways. HIIT can't be done every day because HIIT will beat the shit out of your lower half.
Say that again for the people in the back.
But it still can be used. And then steady state cardio is also very good. They both have their pros and cons as far as time goes and the way it pounds you. And then there's also another thing that I've done too with a lot of my clients that you can really lean out legs better is by sitting on a bike, and I'm talking about a recumbent bike, and just let your legs go through. There's nothing except sprinting with all the other cardio you do. I don't care if it's an elliptical. I don't care if it's on a, running that mile. You are not going through a full range of motion unless you're going on the bike where you get through the whole range and your legs get the top to bottom full all the way around. That could be in a spin class too. Otherwise, your legs are doing partial range of motion to create the pace that you need to finish the mile, to finish 2 miles, 3 miles, and you back off and your legs, don't go that full up, top to bottom.
I really like that you said about the recumbent bike for a few reasons. One, I have clients that are very reluctant to use the bike. They don't want to use the bike.
Yeah.
But I know you guys are big into research, as am I, and many things when it comes to burning calories and burning fat. In a lab, they're using bikes. I guess, and that goes into kind of what I like to do with cardio. I personally like cardio, given the right amount, because it's very easy to measure. I could say, okay, I need you to move, I need you walking for 20 minutes on, an incline. And then if we're still not, yielding the right result, I could up that or decrease it based on the results we're getting. It's very measurable, where I think, food, long as our clients are measuring and weighing the food, it should be consistent, right? Whether they're, over measuring or under, they're still the ones that are doing it. So that consistency should still be there. If we're telling them to eat, a cup of rice, but all their cups are measured out to be a cup and a half or 3/4, they're the ones doing it. So we have the consistency there. The one variable that I feel like I do have a lot of control over is time in motion, right? How much time are we spending doing cardio? How much time are we doing, incline walking or cycling or on the Stairmaster? So I like that as, one of those variables that I can control more.
And even back in 2021, when I won my pro card, I hate cardio as it is, and everybody knows that. Right. So I decided, I had the gym that I was at, before I moved recently, but at the end, I would be doing sled pushes. I would do jump rope. I would do the rower. I would do the ski erg. I would do a sledgehammer hits on a tire. I would do tire flips. And I, not all the time, all at once, but it would be maybe sometimes a 5-6 minute circuit. And then I would take a couple minute break and then maybe do that 3 or 4 times. And that would be my cardio. And I would do that too. And I loved that. And I think it worked very well. But again, that'll beat the shit out of you too. That's, you have to be, mindful of that.
I love to beat the shit out of people.
For me, doing something like that, again, I think I can't measure it, right? I have no benchmark. I can't see the effort being put into, swinging a sledgehammer or, are you really running as fast as you could with the sled or pushing as much weight as you could with the sled?
But if you have if you have an Apple Watch on, or if you have something on, you can kind of measure it pretty well. I think the Apple Watches or the MyZone, you can see what kind of, even though I know they're a little exaggerated, I know they're not perfect, but they can give you an idea of what you're doing during, whether it's your weight training workout or, your other workout. Because, when you start, like when Mike said, when you start doing supersets or even a tri-set or something where you're finishing off the workout, you're going to see you're going to see how your heart rate elevates during certain exercises, whether it's even a walking lunge.
And then can you then go and have a client replicate that for their next session?
Yeah, and some people, like I said, some people sometimes don't get the same heart rate response on like walking lunges that another person might, or even step ups.
Yeah, I know, like my heart wants to explode during walking lunges.
You know what, man? I just basically look at them. I don't even need to watch.
I mean, you can. I know.
Yeah, I adapt to what the person's doing. Like, and I change things up constantly. Like, if you're doing a treadmill every day, your body gets used to it. If you're doing the stairs every day, your body gets used to it. So it's an adaptation. Your body adapts to everything that we do. It's the same thing with food. It's the same thing with your training styles.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Like, we're doing the same bench every week, or we're doing, sometimes I'll throw in like 3 tons a week shoulders. Like, everything changes. Like, it's constantly, I'm always trying to stay ahead of the game.
Right.
So, I might make someone do the concept 2 rower and give me 50 rows, 3-4 rounds, and that's the cardio for the day.
Yep.
And they get off that thing and they're dead.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So I look at it and, I'm more of a mental coach. Like, I like to see how far I could push somebody. I want to push their limits.
Right.
So, even my online people, like, I'll push your limits. Like, I want to see how far and how deep we can go into this. Obviously, there's certain people you can push a lot more.
Right.
And there's certain people you got to pull back. So that's one of my philosophies too, is I look and study the person's personality. I want to know if they're an aggressive person, or are they, a little bit softer, where you have to baby them a little bit more, which I don't like. This is like, I'm talking about my transformation people.
Right,
like, right. My competition people are all hardcore. They're all, like, I could push them to, excuse me, I could push them.
No, fuck it, you could curse.
I could push them to hell and back, like, and they just go. I mean, I even have my Division I football players come back from a training camp.
Right.
And they're training with my women who are over 50 years old, and the women are kicking the shit out of them. And they sit there and laugh. They say, "Oh, here we go. We're coming back to this." and then we laugh. We laugh. But, it takes them a couple of times to adapt to come back to the training style. But again, like, what we're going over now, we all have some different philosophies, some the same. But I think it all comes down to, as coaches, we just adapt to what's going on, and I always feel there's no rule. I never look at a rule. I never read a book and say this is the way, or I never look at someone's training style. I always try to learn more and more.
Right.
So I might see something or read something, and I'll be like, that might work. I might put it into my system, or I might do this and throw it into my system. Or that's how you evolve. That's how you get better. So I'm always constantly looking for a new way.
Yeah.
A new way of training, new way of cardio, new way. There's just so many different ways. It's like hitting a golf ball. Like, what I mean? Like, when I went to go play golf, I'm big, and I'm not supposed to hit a golf ball like I do. And I don't get to the same position as the guy who's built for golf.
Right. Your biomechanics don't allow you to have that same type of fluid swing as somebody else differently would.
But I still get the ball to the same place as him. Right. So.
Right. And that's what we're saying here. We have, varying philosophies, varying techniques. And at the end of the day, we're all producing, some really top level champions here. Right.
Yeah.
So, my whole philosophy is, I don't want to say it's more science-based, but I like, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's the outcome. How do we need to change it? Right. Yeah. I try to eliminate any variables, anything that could be, screwed up. I'm not going to ever tell somebody, all right, go give me, 15 minutes of plyos, and that's going to be your cardio today.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what the fuck you're doing. I can't measure that. So which is why I do like, treadmill work and Stairmaster and bike, because I can measure that. I can tell you, I need more RPMs on the bike, or I need, a steeper incline. I like things I could measure to get that result.
At the end of the day, Mark, plyos aren't cardio anyway, even though people like to suggest that, but they're really not. They're for athletes.
They look good pretty on video, right?
So does a Bosu ball.
The Bosu ball.
And Mark, at the end of the day, we could take all these averages that we learn through science, and most people are going to fall in that, in that center area a lot more than what people. I was like, no, I'm really like out here. I'm really out here as an outlier. No, you're not. You're really not. A lot of people are going to fall generally in that area, and most of them are going to get progress and change from just making progression and making things harder and making them work.
Right.
It's not as hard as what people want to think it is, you know?
I think a lot has to do with the and I guess you guys could all say the same thing. It's with the client itself. Like, you know, like Craig said, if they follow what we tell them to do, they'll be okay. Which,
well,
you know,
which is why you always see people saying, you know, hey, if you want to do better at your next show, get yourself a coach. And I think that that outside eye and you know, somebody just to kind of, you know, pull on the reins a little bit so you don't go off the rails is really the way to get you to the next level as an athlete. Whether you know everything in the world or you don't, you're going to have that outside eye looking at you saying, hey, let's move and try this over here, and let's see what kind of result we get from that.
Absolutely.
Right? Yep.
Well, we saw it how many times. I mean, all of us have been in here, probably 90 years between all of us. We've been in this game. So, you know, like I have a client walk in, I know you if you cheated or not.
Right.
I know.
Right.
I could look at you in a second and say you cheated, and they go, how do you know? I said, I just know.
Well, which brings up another good point. You know, so everybody, you know, you hear about it on social media, you know, oh my God, you know, peak week's beginning, you know, drink all the water, do all the peeing, you know. So I know we definitely all have different philosophies on peak week. And, you know, some people do nothing. Some people do a little something. Some people carb load. Some people, you know, back their carbs off and their water off. So are you following some type of ritual with your clients? You know, do you have all your clients doing the same things? How are you running peak weeks?
I generally try and find out, like the couple of things that people try to do. I don't water deplete. I don't use distilled water. Like, I mean, a lot of people, if their tap water tastes good, you could use that as well. You really don't have to buy spring water. People think it's. I mean, as long as your town's got good water, you can use it. But I generally set their water where they generally drink it to begin with. I do not change it. And maybe at the very end of peak week, I might add a little bit more, and I don't take it away. I don't overload it. I don't take it away. I keep it generally around the same. And then we drink it throughout the day, even the day of the show, where each meal has a certain amount of water. And, you know, that's based on the size of the person and how much they're actually drinking anyway. And then the sodium, I do the same thing with the sodium. I really keep it as is too. I really kind of keep that. If they're having 2,500, 3,000 milligrams a day, I don't play a lot with that either. I might salt a little more on Friday and their meals on Saturday, the day of the show, but that stays the same. Most of the changes that I do occur with the carbs, because carbs and water are your thing that really are going to either fill you out or make you look like shit when you take it away. So the biggest thing I do is work with their carbs. And, you know, and then when you
say take away the water, I know, you know, there's people, they just stop drinking. Like they're just not having anything to drink.
Right.
That's what I do. 3 days before the show, no water. No,
I know he's lying.
So, you know, I mean, you have that, you know, we're not going to change your water, or we're going to stop drinking, you know, 3 days out, you know. So at the end of the day, there's people that are getting on stage that might be winning, that are doing drastic things.
Yeah. Well, that's called Russian roulette, Mike, and Mark.
And then there's people that get on stage that don't do anything that are also winning. So is there a right thing to do here?
Well, the thing is, Mark, like I look at it, like, what are you going to get out of that if you drop, like, people are trying to do these stupid things to try to gain 5% more, make their body look 5% better.
Right.
My philosophies are, I go into peak week. I don't have a plan going into peak week. I go day by day, 10 days out. I start to figure it out. Some people I front load. Some people I back load.
With water or with carbs or?
With carbs and water. I pretty much keep water the same all the way through. I never change water like Rex said. There's no reason to. The only thing I do is I make sure, as we're getting close to the last day or two, I don't mix water with the meal, so they don't get that bloat feeling. Like, you know,
that is a philosophy that, you know, some people do. You know, they don't drink, you know, an hour before, hour after a meal, you know, the last few days.
They can have it, I mean, after, but I just don't want to mix it. You know, I don't like to mix it.
Right.
But there's some people, like, I'll start carb loading on Sunday, you know, and I'll start bringing them up, and then I start to slowly bring it down, you know, and then I'm in a good position on Thursday, Friday, where, you know, where I have control. Or there's some people, like, a little bit, where I start to deplete them a little bit from the carbs on Monday. And then as I'm getting closer and closer, I start to study their body and see, should I keep going more and more? And I start carving them up either Friday, some Thursday. So again, I don't have a plan going in to peak week and say, here's your plan. I more or less follow that person's pattern day by day.
Right.
You know, and then I feel like I'm in more control that way.
Right.
So if we have a plan and then we're going in there, we're telling the people they're expecting a certain thing, I'll just tell them check in, you know, Monday morning, Monday night. I want to see what's going on. Monday, Tuesday morning, you know, and we'll start making changes there. But I let them know what the plan is, but it's not going to, it could change at any time. You know?
So, I mean, you know,
Mark,
you know,
Mark,
go ahead, Craig.
oh, sorry. With the people, I do make a plan for peak week, but it's based on what they're doing currently. But then the thing that I do is throughout peak week, every day during peak week, they send me their weight and picture, AM picture every day. And then we discuss it, and I can change anything on the fly. Don't think that sheet's set in stone. That's just a marker for us to use. And then we adjust as we need. And you have to have constant feedback from your clients. And you know,
it's multiple times throughout the day during peak week. Yeah. You know, I again, so here I definitely do things differently. You know, depending on the client. You know, I mean, if we're still you know, not quite ready for stage and we still have fat to lose, their peak week is going to be completely different than somebody who's already in a great spot.
What's that? Useless peak? It's a useless peak week.
Right. You know, so I'm just going to continue, you know, dieting
trying
hard
to get
and
more fat off of them. Yeah, if you
get ready for the next show. You know, like
that's
people
it.
like that, you know, you got to tell them straight out. Like, be honest and be like, listen, you know, it's not going to happen this show. You know, it's just like,
But you know, most of my clients, you know, I'll brag about it. You know, once in a while, you know, like, you know, we're on time every time at Team Extreme, and you know, that's my job, is to make sure we hit the deadline, right? As a coach, we have that deadline always in mind. You know, like, hey, you know, August 5th, you got to get on stage. You need to be ready for that day. But, you know, I do try to, you know, I will sodium load, I will water load, I will back water off, I will supplement throughout the week, you know, with whether it's, you know, herbal diuretics or caffeine, you know. But I do have like a protocol that obviously I will alter based on the given results. We never go into a show not drinking water. You know, the lowest we'll go is maybe a half a gallon, you know, like on Friday. And same thing on show day. You know, we're still drinking, you know, a half a gallon, but it's a little bit more measured throughout the day. You know, we can't just, you know, freely be, you know, downing, you know, 32 ounces of water, you know, on a whim. So again, so now, boom, 3 different protocols again, right? And at the end of the day,
I'm sorry, Mark. One thing I like to do too is I like to have the client ready 2 weeks before the show. So whatever the target date is of the show, I'd make it like the show is 2 weeks before. So I know that this is our target date, not this. So if we're in a prep, we know we have that little rule.
So those last 2 weeks have to be rough on an athlete trying to hold, you know, that level of conditioning.
Fuck it. Yeah, I mean, if you want to win, that's what you got to do. You know, I mean, I don't feel bad for nobody. Like, you know, if you're telling me you want to push it and go to limits, this is what we got to do, man. We got to push it. And then, you know what? If, you know, 99.5% of the time, everybody on my team does not give a fuck. They just go. So,
Craig, if you end up with somebody that's ready, you know, multiple weeks ahead of time, are you going to refeed them for a while before that?
You can actually start to bring their food up, and they can actually even start to lose more body fat through that process, because their body will take that in and will start to act a little more normal than where it's slowed down from before. So like if you always want to be ahead of the game. If you're ahead of the game, you could start bringing food back in. And whether it's a
ideally,
refeed
that's what we want, right? We want to be eating as much as possible going into a show. You know, how many times, you know, are you backstage and you're hearing people talking about, you know, I only ate 750 calories, you know, all week, or you know, there's plenty of people sub 1,000 calories that are doing this, and it's fucking insane. It's insane. I don't know who their coaches are. I don't know where they're getting their information from, but if that's where they needed to be to get ready for the show, maybe they probably would have benefited from a few more weeks of prep and showed up on stage maybe eating 1,500 calories or 1,400 calories. You know, and I think the overall look is better when you have more food in you.
Well, what happens after the show when they go out and have a big meal? They look better, right? Everybody says, right,
of course,
because they got the sodium, they got the water, and they got food that filled out. You know, 90% of the time, my clients, they're feeding into the show. 90% of the time, I'm growing them into the show. I have them in a position where I want that body fat down 2 weeks, 3 weeks before, and I'm starting to push it, push it at a different level.
Right.
The cardio's starting to drop, the food's going up, so, again, it's people are different. Everybody's different. We don't know, until you see that client.
Right, right, yeah.
Oh, I mean, it could change.
What do you guys make? So when we all started out, I think the internet was in its infancy stage.
Yes.
There weren't online coaches. There was none of that. We all came up learning and doing in the trenches every fucking day of the week.
Hell yeah.
Right? We're just smelling rubber and sweat in the gyms every day doing the job. So what do you make of some of these 25-year-old coaches that have been doing it for 2 years, or they competed in 1 or 2 shows, and all of a sudden they're a coach? Like, what's your take on that? What do you feel about that?
You know what, Mark? Oh, Craig, I'm sorry.
That's
sorry.
Okay. Go ahead. No, you're good. I said go ahead, Mike. Yeah.
I know, Craig, you feel the same way as I do.
Yeah.
You know what, man? It's, like all of us, Mark, how old are you? You're good.
I'm going to be 44 next month.
Right. Me and Craig were in our 50s, right?
Yes, yes.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So, but I'm saying, when we started, we wouldn't dare take a client on till 10 years into it. Like really knowing and understanding. I know you're like that too, Craig. You're pretty much like, we're pretty much the same philosophy on that. These guys today do one show and they think that they're going to be a coach.
Yeah.
Which is total bullshit, because you're taking people's money. Hey, you don't know what the hell you're doing. You're, like you said before, Mark, you're putting people on sub 1,000 calories, right? Destroying their metabolism. Then you have them doing 50 minutes of cardio or an hour, sometimes twice a day.
Right.
Metabolism is going lower and lower. There's set points in the tank. Then these people turn around and they say, I can't do this no more. And they start eating. And next thing you know, they're gaining so much weight so fast and they're in trouble. And then what happens is you're destroying the sport by doing that.
Do you think the industry has literally been destroyed because of online coaching?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I feel the same way too.
I think they killed a lot of people.
Hats off to all the people that are making a living online, not having to go to the work or face their client face to face when they're not getting results. More power to you. I think it takes a lot more balls to be face to face with that client and telling them face to face, like, hey, you're not going to be ready. Or that client questioning you in person, saying, hey, coach, I'm doing this and that like you asked me to do, but I'm not getting the result. Why? Right? Yeah. These online coaches could hide behind a keyboard, right? Spend 3 fucking days researching, like, oh my God, why isn't this working for me?
Copy and paste.
Copy and paste and send an email back. And, they're charging ridiculous amounts of money. I've had clients come to me that are paying upwards of $600 a month for an online coach to find out that the program that they're using is the same exact program that 20 other bikini competitors are using.
Mark, I got a client the other day charging, the coach was charging $75 more than I do, right? I looked at the plan. You wouldn't even believe what this person was eating. 3 ounces 3 times a day of protein, 3 ounces, 9 ounces a day, a girl. I couldn't even believe it. She was eating like 700 calories a day for 4 months. She goes, I haven't lost weight in 3 months.
Craig will tell you, like, your metabolism slows down, and you're fucking yourself at that point.
That's right, and that's what we see. Because what happens is it's easy in the beginning. Someone will start a diet plan, they'll lose 4 pounds, and everything's going great. We're like, oh, everything's moving along. We'll do. This guy's great. This coach, this girl's coach, they're great. Then all of a sudden, the next week they lose maybe 1 pound. Then 3 weeks later they lose nothing. Then they say, all right, you got to up your cardio. Nothing happens the following week. You got to drop your food. Nothing happens again.
Well, and then the coaches, they'll blame the client. Well, you're obviously not doing what I'm telling you to do.
You're lying. Yeah.
They fall into that trap. And then you know what? They fall into that trap. They destroy the person's set point. The person's metabolism is gone. And then they come to us. And then we have to explain to them how we have to reverse diet them.
All the time. All the time.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, what do you mean reverse diet? I said, it's going to take a while now to rehab you, get you back.
I think, to be a really effective online coach, you have to have years and decades of working with people in person to know, what to expect, different outcomes based on different protocols, why people are or are not responding to what you're having them do. I wish some of these younger online coaches, guys, girls, would seek out mentors and say, hey, Mike, I want to be an online coach. I like to work from home. I don't really want to see people, I'm scared of COVID, whatever it is.
Yeah.
How do I go about doing that? And I would be more than happy to mentor more people than I already do to do online coaching, because I think we have an industry that is fucking tainted with bullshit. And we see it on the other side of the sport, right? We work, all three of us work with a lot of natural people, but on the other side of the sport, it's just prescribe more drugs, prescribe more drugs, prescribe more drugs.
That's the way you fix everything. And
that's
Mark,
it.
just like I know Mike has a lot of people that come to his place because they're local to him, and that's the way. If I can help it, and I know you do it too. If you can see your clients in person, that's such a big thing to me, and I feel it's more personable. And if I can do, I will do like a small skin fold assessment on my people every 4 weeks if they can come, because it'll allow me to see that. I don't care what the body fat is, but I
want to see it trending down.
You get an original number, and then you can watch how the skin fold numbers are going down. And I use a general foresight to not make it crazy. Right. And I know 2 of those are higher on men, 2 of those are higher on women. And I use that all the time if I can see them in person. And I think that the other part too, and I know he deals with a lot of athletes, but I also deal with a lot of general population, and it gives you that hands-on touch that you're not going to get when you just go straight to online. You don't learn a whole lot. You still should have some kind of online, in-person type of training, because it keeps you, fresh with what you're doing. Everything can't be done like, we're over here and we can't touch and I know, however, you're still touching a person and giving them cues, and they're right in front of you. Just like even posing, when you're posing with a person, you can do it online too, but when you can do a hands-on assessment right in front of you, it's such a big difference.
For a long time, I had so many people coming from New York, Philadelphia, Scranton, and they were making that trek out to me, every 2 weeks. So we could do that, right? So we could get, good skin fold measurements. I could see what they're looking like. We could look at their posing and see how their body's changing, because they would send me pictures during the week. And honestly, I would ignore them. Like, okay, thanks. Like, I'm not seeing a daily change in you, and unfortunately online, sometimes people, they want that positive feedback. But I'm not the one to sit there and say, hey, looking great, keep going. Hey, looking great, can't wait to see you tomorrow. That's not me. I'm not going to feed you bullshit. I want to tell you how it is. So I want to see you in person and do it that way. If you're coming from far, fly in one time. But I need to see you in person so I know what I'm looking at.
I think one of the most important things when you're seeking out a coach, first thing, find somebody that's been in the industry for a long time, like, it's been there at least 15 years. Right. If you're going to spend your money, look at and then look at the clients that they have. Try to see what they're doing, see what they produce. Because somebody won a physique show or that's not the guy. You know what I'm saying? Because physique. He might just have good genetics, and then you turn around and he might not know shit. So mostly,
hey, it's funny you say that. When you get somebody that comes to you, and you're trying to decide, where to put this person, and we're looking at them, their body type, will you try to hold somebody back if you think like, hey, maybe your lats aren't wide enough for figure or for men's physique, will you try to steer them into something different? One of the things that I see is we do get a lot of people in natural bodybuilding, athletes that get on stage for, like, women's physique is a perfect example of this. They're shaped like marathon runners. They're just super lean, no real shape. Like, is that really the division for them? Is somebody not guiding them? I would never put somebody with that shape in women's physique, or I would try to change their training and try to mold that physique to make it look the way it's supposed to look.
Mark, I this is like, in last year, I've been assessing a lot of things, and one thing I noticed, and Greg, you know about this, the judging, I just don't know anymore what to do. You sit there. No, seriously, like it's I don't want to bring it up like that, but I'm meaning that the only thing I do, and what I think of now, is I bring my person in the best condition and the best I can. Right. And then whatever happens from there happens, because one show, I'll bring them in shredded, and they'll say, too hard. The next show, I bring them in a little softer, not hard enough. Right. It's so where does it go? Like, you
different judges see things differently, and that's their problem.
We're at a show where, like, you know, with the wellness division and bikini division, like we mean you sit there like, what are you
looking at this point, right?
At this point, what is it? Like, we don't know. Like, you know, a girl comes in, she looks like a bikini girl, she's hard. They're telling us that wellness, she wants off there. You know, so I'm sitting there like, what do you...
I don't want people to get confused out there, and I'm sure you guys will agree. You need a low level of body fat for no matter what division you're competing in.
Yep. Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So we could scratch that off. So fat isn't the look, right?
Right.
I need to see some muscle, some lines, separation, right? I want to see some lines going
that's
on.
going to put them in a certain class.
Right.
The bone structure is going to be something, and then I was just, because this is so annoying sometimes too, but they have to, you know, sometimes in natural bodybuilding, they can move up a class eventually. Too many women start to make the criteria worse by staying in the staying
in that division, right?
Bikini or figure, where they could go to figure, and figure can go to physique or bodybuilding.
And, and I always try to compare it to the upper end or the top athletes in our sport. You know, like, I know one of my past podcasts, we were talking about classic physique. Does classic bodybuilding belong in natural bodybuilding, or is classic actually natural bodybuilding? And what I said was, at the upper end, if you take, you know, the Meshachs and say like a Richie Lopez, they're at the top end of what it should look like, right?
Yeah.
So, and you see a clear distinction there. And I think wellness in natural bodybuilding is still a little bit too new, where people are going to be familiar with, like, no, you need to look like this, right?
Right.
But you know, wellness, you know, wellness is that upside down man who doesn't train legs, right? We want bigger legs, bigger glutes. You know, we still want muscle. You could be hard on top, that's fine, but you should have that, you know, unbalanced
look. Yeah, which is never what bodybuilding was supposed to be. Bodybuilding was always supposed to be balanced.
Wellness is anti-bodybuilding. However, I really like the look when it's done right.
Yeah,
it does look good.
But in natural bodybuilding, Mark, it's going to be like way less than enhanced bodybuilding, because
but we also
girls just can't look like that. It's a very, very different look. And in natural bodybuilding, you get like 1 out of 100 or more girls that'll actually look like they fit the part.
Well,
that really fit the part. Not just going into the category, they fit the part.
Guys, this was a great session. You know, having you guys on here. Appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules. You know, for everybody listening out there, you know, you could find Mike at you know, Team Rare Breed, Craig Yarnell at Team Synergy and Science, and me, I'm everywhere. But feel free, reach out to them, reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns, or you're looking for a little guidance. I know all three of us would be more than willing to give you a little off the record advice if you're already working with somebody. But we want to see everybody safe out there. We want to see everybody kicking ass on stage this year. Guys, you have anything to say in closing?
No, it was a great session. I really enjoyed it, Mark, and I appreciate you letting me on and being able to talk. And it's great to see Craig, you know, and as always. And it was really good to get together like this. I think it's something that we can spread the word a lot more when you get knowledgeable coaches together and talk about things that people need to hear.
Great. Great.
Yep. And we're going to, you know, we'll eventually see if everybody, you know, the season's coming around. So in the next few weeks, we'll start to be seeing each other, you know, around. And this was a great session for everybody to learn from. We all always pick up little things from everybody, even the top line, you know, coaches that I've learned from too. You know, there's always little things that you can learn. Never stop. We never should stop learning.
Absolutely. Nope. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Jim Eat Repeat. And as a reminder, this year's Mr. America will be October 7th through 9th in Atlantic City, New Jersey. For more information, check out www.mramerica.com.
One time, go get it, it's yours, let's shine.